On the inaugural 2026 episode of Tech Threads, I'm pleased to welcome Sander Arts, a veteran technology leader, advisor, and startup builder who's helped create phenomena like Arduino, enable rapid growth and exits on AI companies like Grok and Infabrica, with a career spanning global brands like Philips, NXP, and Marvell, as well as cutting-edge AI infrastructure startups. Sander brings a rare perspective on innovation ecosystem and what it takes to scale great technology.
Welcome to Tech Threads, Weaving the Intelligent Future, the podcast exploring the fast-paced world of technology. In each episode, we dive into the latest innovations in data movement, AI acceleration, and the transformative potential of chiplet technology. Join us as we explore the breakthroughs that shape the future of computing and hear from industry experts on what's coming next in the tech landscape.
Hello, and welcome to the inaugural episode of Tech Threads to kick off 2026. I'm Nandan Nayampally, Chief Commercial Officer at Baya, and 2025 is a phenomenal year of growth for AI as a whole market, and of course for Baya as well. The rising valuations of companies like Infabrica and exits actually, and Grok, and our guest today has a hand in those and many more successes last year. So I'd like to welcome Sander Arts. Sander is a very seasoned technology executive, startup advisor, and innovation leader with a career that is rooted in bringing breakthrough technologies to market. Originally from the Netherlands, Sander began his journey in Europe with global technology leaders like Philips, NXP, and Atmel, gaining a strong foundation in semiconductor systems before moving to Silicon Valley and leading marketing at companies like Marvell. But more importantly, over the years, he's helped shape the growth and market strategy of some of the most influential and ambitious startups in computing, such as Sci-Fi, Grok, Infabrica, and AI innovators like Syntient and Mythic, as well as creating almost maker paradigms like Arduino. Now, working at the intersection of hardware, software, and AI, he served as a fractional CMO, board member, advisor, investor, helping teams define their vision, build ecosystems, and turn deep technology into real-world adoption in terms of product. With a unique experience that spans both European and US innovation cultures, Sander brings a pretty transatlantic approach and perspective to startups, to AI infrastructure, and what truly takes to scale transformative technology globally. Welcome, Sander.
Well, thanks for having me. It's like anything else I'm going to say after this is going to not be as good as your introduction. So I don't know what you were trying to do, but here we are. The expectations are now high.
You've set it up right. So
yeah.
Speaking of which, right, you've had a pretty amazing and diverse, and I would say expansive career in tech, right? So across multiple continents, across an entire spectrum of companies at different stages of evolution, and beyond that, not just into products and marketing, but into supply chains, to initiatives like Arduino and ecosystems. So can you give us a little bit of a glimpse into your journey and the motivations that shaped your career path?
Yeah, well, yes. So there's like planned stuff and unplanned stuff, and in my life there's actually a lot of unplanned stuff because I like to just talk to everybody, and then one thing leads to the next, right? But that's not how my career started, obviously. So I had to write a master thesis over in the Netherlands back in the day. This is like a long time ago, and I still had hair. And I decided to write it within a company because I didn't want to write it within a library. And I ended up at Philips, and I didn't know, but Philips also had a semiconductor division, and that's where I landed. And then my education, which I think everybody knows by now, isn't in engineering, right? So I am a non-technical person, though I've been around for a while. So I wrote a thesis over at Philips Semiconductors, and then I stuck around, which was a decently structured career. So I moved up the chain into marketing and communications and public relations and branding and a whole bunch of those things until eventually, after only a few years, I led the entirety of the go-to-market marketing, corporate marketing and marketing communications over at NXP Semiconductors globally. And then after I came to the Valley, which is like the largest and best candy store on the planet, as far as I'm concerned, I got exposed to a variety of new things, which has led to me having been able to assist over 40 companies in the last 9 years as an independent contractor, where people hire me to do a variety of things, which you have already highlighted in your introduction. So people hire me as chief marketing officer. I give some advice. I help them go to market, etc., etc. So it's like, I think it has mostly to do with the fact that I like new things. And new things lead you to more new things. And then once that flywheel is going, it's actually not that hard to keep it going. And I'm very blessed to be surrounded by a whole bunch of people that will have and will continue to help me as long as I don't screw anything up.
That sounds about right. And I would say it's one thing leads to another. But unless those things lead to success, it's tough to keep the flywheel going. And you've been pretty associated with success. So I want to start with, especially this conversation, I'd love to focus on growth, ecosystems, and kind of paradigms, how to get to market, right? So I want to look a little bit deeper into Arduino, which really jump-started the IoT kind of maker community and probably boosted the wave in the last decade, right? You were also early in key AI startups like Sentient Mythic at the edge to companies like Grok, which are going mainstream. So how did you kind of gravitate towards that? Clearly, you're right in that you said, hey, maybe you're outside in view rather than being a deep tech purist. What did you see as your value add? What opportunity did you see and how?
Well, that is a big question. So Arduino happened, and this is an example of what I just alluded to in my previous, was like one thing leads to the next, is when I joined Atmel, it turns out that Atmel's 8-bit AVR microcontroller was sitting on Arduino's most popular development board, the Arduino Uno. I knew none of these things when I joined Atmel. So I didn't know about an 8-bit microcontroller, and I didn't know about Arduino Uno. But what I found out is that if you start to squint and you look at the Arduino community and the people that are in it, but also the people that are building meaningful companies on top of Arduino or with Arduino, that the sky is the limit, right? And it's essentially sort of rooted in technology only comes to life when it's touched by people kind of premise. And there's millions and millions and millions of people, of course, touching Arduino, building interesting things. And I think I got in touch with it at the right time, to your point, because that's where you had the explosion of IoT, right? So where previously it was a microcontroller business was a microcontroller business, but then of course that paired with connectivity devices, whatever those are, right? Bluetooth or Wi-Fi or what have you, in combination with a security device, was nice as a value proposition that I could go use over at Atmel and build an IoT. I didn't build the business, right? But build an IoT promise, and Atmel needed that back in the day because they had positioned themselves, for better or for worse, I don't even know whether it was an original plan, as a touch controller business, which we all know is very much exposed to consumer and mobile, and it's not something that Wall Street is deeply in love with because the ups and downs in that business are too much. So I was lucky, right, that IoT was happening, that Arduino was already established with Atmel, that we already had an install base of customers using our chip, and that's sort of what led to that. Then after I left Atmel, I joined Arduino, helped them a little bit, but by then their whole community and the business and was very much robust. And we all saw Arduino's successful exit towards Qualcomm last year, because Qualcomm is very much wanting to build an IoT business or have an IoT business. And then, so that sort of exposed me to edge compute, right? And IoT and how you combine a variety of things. Sentient came knocking, and Sentient, of course, had their initial value proposition of always on voice at the edge, where you could essentially talk to any device that you wanted. And I was very much intrigued by it, because the initial premise of those businesses is that there is a technology that you could sell to 10 people, but in the case of Sentient back in the day, you could also sell that to hundreds of thousands of people. And honestly, it's really what I like to. So I like chip companies that have the ability to go sell to hundreds of thousands of customers. Now, that's not really what I have been doing in the last few years, because I had realized after I had talked to Marvell and after I had been at Marvell, that the data center was going to be big. There's an open door for you. And that I wanted to be part of that as well. So I did and have done both, but they're clearly very, very different markets and completely different dynamics, etc.
So if I stick to the sensor edge side, right, on the edge AI portion, and we had an interesting overlap during our respective stints at BrainChip, which is doing neuromorphic. You clearly see data center has a huge play and it's continuing to grow. But just as a kind of look back for truly scaling different use cases, how do you see the edge and sensor edge AI growing or expanding?
Well, I think sort of quietly, IoT has taken off, right? Everybody has consistently said that it's a difficult market because it's so diversified, and it's hard to go get like $5 billion in revenue, right? And it has the blessing and the curse. That the blessing is you can sell to 100,000 customers. The curse is it's hard to support 100,000 customers. So it's like, that's difficult. I think with AI, you also see that there's like, I don't know what people are calling it, but like AI, OT or whatever. But there's, of course, an increasing amount of compute happening at the edge, which is then, of course, also something that Sentient was doing. It's actually also something, you haven't mentioned it yet, but that Accelera, at least initially, was doing, right? And
Yep.
And the Accelera premise, when Fabrizio talked to me, was incredibly appealing to me, because where most AI companies want to target let's say, fixed amount of customers, Fabrizio is really all about democratizing AI. And he was basically applying he wanted to go and apply, that's why he wanted to talk to me, a mass market, long tail sort of IoT kind of business model to it, which was incredibly appealing to me, because that's what I intellectually like, right? It's like, how can we sell a piece of technology to tens of thousands of customers and be able to support it is intriguing. And most people, of course, are not doing that, even though some of the characteristics of some of those businesses are that you can sell it to multiple tens of thousands of customers. But the reality of things is that people aren't, because it's very hard to support it from a technical point of view. And before you know it, you scale yourself into tremendous problems.
Yeah. And I think one of the key challenges I've always seen with kind of sensor edge AI, but I think it'll come into its own, is the ecosystem overall, right? Second is the ability to repurpose tech, because a lot of these small sensor processors need to be cheap, need to be capable, But as privacy comes in, as security comes in as critical, when you start looking at personal data, health data, etc., needing to be closer to the sensor, these will come into their own and will have more value. But there needs to be some level of standardization on ecosystem that makes some of these things possible. In fact, as you talked about IoT, right? In my past life at ARM as well, one of the things that I think spurred the IoT world was the fact that instead of silos that different microcontroller companies had, with ARM as an adopted architecture across the different microcontrollers, you started actually getting an ecosystem of middleware that made it portable across different systems. And I think that will also show up as the software platforms and the ecosystems around this kind of grow.
Sure. Yeah. Well, yeah, I think it takes a while before you've pushed something over a hump, right? Is sort of what you're saying. Yeah. And sort of but not all customers are the same, right? So as much as it's like transferable, it probably isn't. There's a whole bunch of these people that are all trying to do something, but all of those things are decently different. Which makes it interesting but difficult on the sales side, on the sales motion and the technical support associated with it.
Indeed. And I think everybody's trying to build a moat, even though the benefits are for them to scale. So it's quite likely that the service providers or the value providers will be the ones helping create that platform as opposed to individual silicon providers. Right?
Yeah, well, but it's kind of interesting because that's probably where some of these machine learning model businesses come into play, right? Which of course Sentient has one, which is helping them very much sort of penetrate a variety of verticals because that's as an underlying piece that you can play with helps you build a value proposition into verticals. It's also why a Nordic semiconductor last year acquired Newton.ai, a company that I was very closely connected with, and for the same reason, right? How can you go apply machine learning to a boring standard microcontroller and go enter new markets and businesses, right? So every single semiconductor company on the planet that is doing microcontrollers and let's call it IoT had acquired a machine learning model business, and we still had one, and Nordic still hadn't acquired one. So it was a very nice marriage. And if I have to believe, and I do because I have really good friends over at Nordic, believe all the news about what happened after that acquisition, things seem to be going really well because it gives Nordic a nice new value prop in an existing customer base, but probably also in a new customer base.
Indeed. And so now let's move the trajectory to the big ones from last year, which are, when I looked at edge AI, sensor edge is a very different fragmented market. Network edge, which is where kind of Accelera started, Hilo started, and even to some extent Grok was playing, was much more like, hey, a smaller server rather than pure data center. But now everyone has moved towards solutions towards data center. So if you look at the two big ones from last year, right, Grok and of course Fabrica, they're two different portions of AI in data center. One is looking at compute, very efficient, very diverse, kind of specialized compute. Which of course also means a lot of connectivity, a lot of data movement in that. And then of course, Fabrica, which is looking at, hey, how do I scale up and scale out? How do I get the connectivity right? And both were really big acquisitions into Nvidia. So this is a little bit of, your journey through them as well as what you've seen them kind of do, especially the last year.
Yeah, and so maybe start off by saying something like Jonathan, who I have very close to my heart because I love him, would say something like, "Hey, this was a 10-year overnight success," right? And I mean, and kudos to him and congratulations to him and everybody at Grok for pulling that off. But I think what we've seen there, and the same is actually the case at America, is that the market and the dynamics and AI were almost bypassing, but also helping the progress of those businesses, right? So when I started at Fabrica, I think the initial belief, it wasn't the premise, but the initial belief was that the data center would like disaggregate and that there was going to be a whole bunch of decision makers going to go in and plug in better solutions so that you had a more efficient way of doing things. And then, of course, in the meantime, Nvidia was trying to sort of, let's say, not disaggregate and build a standard solution that people just have to plug into the wall. And I had already, by the way, indicated at the beginning of this conversation that I am not technical, so you get the standard art version of Fabrica. And then, of course, Rochin and Shujit and the team, brilliant people, built that chip, right? Which, of course, had to be sold to people that wanted to go make a move in this market of AI data centers, efficiency, and for them building their own solutions, which had a good traction, but also was found decently hard, as we all know, right? And which then resulted in that memory box that Anveruca created. And when everything was said and done at that particular point in time, Nvidia had decided that they wanted to do a non-exclusive license agreement for the technology and hire the engineering team to go build that solution from within Nvidia. And then Grok is completely different, right? Over there, I think when I joined, it was all about we have a deterministic architecture, which I always that word always struck me as a disease. So I tried talking to people about what it is that that word means to them. I think over there, the world just eventually needed very fast inference, which Jonathan had, or which Grok had. And that move at the end of last year from Nvidia to do a similar deal, right? A non-exclusive transaction with Grok and hiring the majority of the team, leaving a bunch of stuff intact over at Grok was remarkable, to say the least. But I think it's great because now Nvidia also has that high-speed inference. But it's all, I think, as much as they're different, there is similarities in the sense that AI has just accelerated anything and everything so fast and hard that it's very hard to go build something, make a value proposition, and then go be successful. Though both of these companies obviously were very successful all by themselves, right? Both Fabrica and Grok, which is like being proved by the fact that, of course, both got acquired. But yeah, it's not for the faint of heart. I know Jonathan and Rochin and Shujit, all those people that worked at these companies worked more than extremely hard and it's actually rooted in, because these people didn't really want to go and build a company and be rich or whatever, right? When you talk to these people, they'll tell you that they want to democratize compute, make sure that it's accessible to the world, and that is not a BS story, right? That's also what makes them going. I remember many nights where I would exchange texts with Rochin, who would still be in the office over at America. There is a lot of things that people haven't seen. The same goes for Jonathan, which makes me almost like very proud of those people, but also makes me be more than respectful for the stuff that they have pulled off. It's totally incredible. And they, for years and years and years, they completely focused on building those businesses with the belief that the world needs compute in a very efficient fashion so that the world can be a better place.
No, it makes sense. And I think what you said resonates perfectly with how we look at things at Baya, right? So two things that you said are very fundamental. Even NVIDIA, with all its resources and a $4.5 trillion market cap feels that the amount of time or specialization it would have to invest to get that acceleration is much better spent by acquiring that tech, right? And same thing with Fabrica. And so there is a lot of this that is best in class that you may or may not be able to develop in a homegrown fashion. And as you go into a lot of this AI, is data movement, memory management, all of that comes in pretty handy. Right? And I think it is getting to the pace of innovation that is required basically means that there's more and more of these specialized solutions that will be integrated, acquired, sub-licensed, acqui-hired, bigger companies. Right?
Yeah. Yeah, and because so here's maybe the advantage, or the listener can decide, right? Or maybe the disadvantage, I don't know, but of sort of not being able to really fully comprehend the technical details of all those companies, right? In all honesty, it's like as an external voice or viewer, it's to your point, right? It's like, what is Nvidia or anyone else, right? Intel or AMD or Broadcom or Marvell gonna go build themselves? It's hard because there's only so many R&D dollars and so many people, and there's a roadmap at the customers, which probably drive the majority of the activity. And then there's companies like yours and all the others that are solving a particular piece of the puzzle, which is awesome, right? It's like the best thing ever, I think. But from an external point of view, as far as I'm concerned, it's so because I look at it through a lens of marketing, right? It's like, what are these people trying to solve? It's like, okay, we all know that the data center isn't very efficient. Should it be more efficient? Yes. Here's a solution. And then the solution can be bucketed in a variety of places, right? There's no lack of photonics people that go in. There's no lack of chip cooling people that go in. There's no lack of systems people that go in. And there's no lack of chip people that go in, right? And everybody is sort of, if you're me, right, and the same thing if you squint, right, and you look at these companies and the problem that everybody's trying to solve is, it's like, okay, we can now go squeeze out more performance out of a data center, right? That's essentially what they're saying. And it's like, and I have my own unique way of doing it. Baya, of course, being one of them. And I think you guys should be extremely proud of the brand that you built, the traction that you are getting. And I think somebody over there, including you, Nandan, is smart enough to go attack it in the right way, right? Because I'm convinced that if you're Switzerland, that's the way to do it, right? Because if you attach yourself to one, I don't think that that's the best way to go about it, and you probably won't win. But it's great that there is a whole bunch of people, especially in this valley, but including in Eindhoven, right? Where people say, okay, I see a problem. I believe in this. I also think the world needs to become a better place. Let's go build a company with a whole bunch of other crazy people that also don't want to sleep and want to go build crazy stuff and have a great time doing it, even though some days are not as good as others, let's be honest. But I think, that's the beauty of the valley, but there's no lack of innovation in places like Austin and in Israel, right? And in the Netherlands and probably a whole bunch of other places.
No, indeed. And I think the traditional kind of metaphor is, hey, AI is the gold rush right now. And we're selling picks and shovels to the miners. And in this case, maybe AI-enabled picks and shovels. Let's put it that way. But I think that brings me to the next question that we're talking about, right? So in terms of picks and shovels for the gold rush, that is AI, like ecosystems and supply chains become fundamental, right? Arduino kind of demonstrated what a maker community, what the supply chain was, whether it's middleware, it was drivers, it was platforms, etc. I remember being engaged with you on one of your investments in Devolver, where you were also advisor, which was kind of building out edge AI supply chain research and kind of enablement, which I think was acquired by Siemens, was it?
Yeah.
And so talk us to talk to us a little bit about how you're seeing that evolve? Because that's actually where a lot of the additional value and enablement's coming from.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting. So I don't know. I actually don't know where to start. It's a really good question, right? So I think European companies, maybe they're like more naive, but have the tendency to be way more open and showing the world what they have. Then I moved to America 15 years ago, and then I was like, Mr. Let's go show everybody what we have going from Europe. And then there was like all these people, including a whole bunch of these people at Marvell, that were trying to sort of clamp down on all the things that I wanted to go do. And things are like behind walls, and you have to log in, and it's all customer. And America, to a certain degree, was actually the same, right? I think maybe even Grok in the beginning was the same, because I remember a conversation with Jonathan very, very early on in my very first conversation, actually, where he showed me the chip, and you couldn't find anything on the internet around Grok. And Jonathan says, "Oh, we taped out yesterday, and this thing is working." And I go, "Oh, what the heck, right? Where are you communicating?" And he's like, "No, we don't have to, right?" Because he's from Google. Turns out, of course, he's 10 times smarter than I am. But he didn't really want to go and communicate, and I think that that's a mistake. Right, because the thing is, you have to go show stuff to people in a very open way. So maybe people can still call me European and or naive even, but I'm sort of very convinced about the fact that if you don't show people what you have, it's not gonna work. And the cheap example, which is now like smart and whatever, right? But is Grok, of course, eventually opened up to the world the fact that they got a fast thing, made their own ChatGPT on their website, and all of a sudden, not all of a sudden, but in a months, they had 1.5 million developers building stuff on their hardware. Right now, of course, that doesn't go. You can't do that for every company, but it's my strong belief that you have to go have people pound on your stuff, use it, right? And it's basically comes back to the statement that I made before. It's like technology will come to life when it's touched by people. Now I know American companies are like, yeah, but I don't want my stuff touched by all the people, right? And I know it's hard eventually also from a tech support point of view, but getting feedback, building things, doing it with customers, getting feedback, because this is not a market that is slow, right? Yeah. Within 3, 4, 5, 6 weeks, the world keeps on. So what are you going to do, right? You have to talk to people, I think.
Indeed. I think what it could have been an 8-year overnight success instead of a 10-year overnight success.
Yeah, who knows? Well, Jonathan probably has something really smart and really funny to say when he hears this conversation.
But yeah, I mean, to be fair, I do think that there's the right level, because go too early and people try it, it's not ready, it keels over, you don't get as much of a second chance. Go too late, everybody else has come in before. So you probably need the right spot. And considering what Nvidia wanted to pay for it, maybe they threaded the needle.
Yeah, they probably saw what else is in the pipeline going forward, right? It's like in the last few months, I've started to help a few startups. I wouldn't necessarily go and plug them because it sounds a little cheap, but with some of those startups, the conversations have been, it's like, can we go and peel the onion, right? So can we, as much as you're sort of maybe not proud, or you're proud, but if you don't think you have something that's like amazing, are you holding off and not communicate because you think you're going to make it better, which of course is an engineering, let's say, disease? Or are you just going to say, hey, look, I have this thing and it's the thing and this is where I am today, and then gradually open the kimono or peel the onion, whatever the metaphor is, associated with that. And that's actually in one example, it's called Aria's networking, Sutter Hill investment, been proven to be very, very, very effective, and actually to the surprise of everybody. Because we were like, oh, the initial product is like, okay, it's great, right? And it's a great result of engineering work, et cetera, et cetera. But is it good enough? And then it turned out, once we opened the kimono a little bit, that it was actually way more than we had anticipated. And people love it and loved it. And there's a lot of customer traction already happening for that business.
And I think that's one of the points that I was going to suggest we get into a little bit of a dive on, right? So myself also spending 16 years with companies like ARM, which are European. And yes, ARM's now very global, but if you go back to 2004, it was technically global, but a lot more of a European mindset, right? Which was enabled broadly, etc. So you have also had a unique perspective in startup cultures on both sides of the Atlantic, and you've already kind of dived into some of the differences that you see, right? What else do you think is different? And right now, there's a lot of investment going into European startups from various EU governments, etc. There's a lot of interest because there is a lot of fair technology leadership that's emerging from those places. I think the commercialization of go-to-market is what has been somewhat of the challenge. So, what can you say about that, and how is it kind of coming together in this rather global innovation hub now?
Yeah, well, I think it's it has to do with capital, honestly. Because the people are as smart as everywhere else. Now, of course, you can argue that the people here are, they're not smarter, but they're smarter because they sit in Silicon Valley and you're closer proximity to other smart people. So you make yourself smart by making 5 phone calls. That may actually be a little bit different and less so the case in Europe. But I mean, at the core, engineers and all those things.
If I may, right? I think that's probably another reason why there's a lot more IP there rather than end product, right? But there's a lot of cool tech that can be absorbed into end product in bigger markets. But anyway, I'll let you continue. Sorry.
No, I agree with that, right? So, but here's my exactly, right? But that's where the capital thing comes in, because where here people say, hey, look, I got a great idea. If I had $35 million, I would be able to accelerate the development. I hire 3 go-to-market people, and we're going to go sell. In Europe, everybody's like, oh, are you sure that we should be doing this? Let's hold on, right? And wait. And that's a big problem, actually. And that's also why innovation over there is like slower. And you see that if you do it correctly, which I don't want to go plug Acceler out 4 times, but Fabrizio is right, because that's exactly what Fabrizio did, right? And the startups that he's like, raise a bunch of money and then go run really fast, because the market is certainly there. And I think that's way more of a thing in the US than it is in Europe. And I see it in I help a few startups. I help a few startups in the quantum space in France and also in the Netherlands. The conversations are very difficult. I don't know why, but they are very difficult because then I say, hey, you should raise 30 million, and then 4 people get a heart attack, right? It's like, oh, that's not the way this is supposed to be going. It's like, yeah, you can't go make something and win if you don't put in the upfront investment, And I actually think I wouldn't say that that's the main and only problem, but it is a very, very large contributor as to why some of those things in Europe are less successful or go slower than here.
I think you hit the nail on the head there. I mean, we've been having a fun time discussing this. I can't believe we're already well past 35 minutes, but I do want to, on that note that you just had, you seem to have a nose for this bleeding edge of technology, even though, as you say, you're not deep tech. Maybe you squint a lot, but you squint well. If you were to kind of put all your thinking caps on, or your new glasses on, what do you see as the next thing? Clearly, you mentioned quantum, but I'd love to see if there's any specific trend or specific technology or type of company that you think is coming on next, or overall market trend.
Yeah, I think by now, Nanda, we could say whatever you want, because maybe people have sort of stopped listening. Well, we're going to find out in the comments down below. Yes, now I think robotics, right, is big, or will be big. The neo clouds, right, super interesting as emerging, or probably more than an emerging market. Quantum, I've mentioned it to you, right? I think, but but specific areas in quantum, not the quantum companies that have said quantum is going to be big, and they've said it for the last 15 years, and they're going to say it for the next 15. But there is actually quantum companies that do have revenue and customers, and I'm assisting a few of those, and it's actually super exciting. One of them is in France, and the other one is in Delft. And then there is the companies that are going through large transitions. It's mostly SaaS companies, right, that have to go reinvent themselves and have to start and become like an AI business, which is not an easy task, especially if you have a whole bunch of revenue that you want to protect or not lose, or right, that you're sort of carefully treading around. And in some cases, some of those people with an existing bunch of revenue will have to cannibalize it a little bit. But I think those are the areas, at least, that I see. There's probably a whole bunch of other stuff that is very hot. I also hope that and all the networking, right? Every single thing that's like associated with networking, making data centers be more efficient and faster and better is probably the right place to be. So yeah, that's what I'm currently spending my time on and in and with, and it's still it's the best thing to do. You know, talk to people that build stuff, talk to people that are smarter than me, and learn something every day, and then be featured on a podcast and have to say a whole bunch of things that aren't technical is awesome. And I think you guys are great. You're great, and I actually do think that. That careful path towards success that you're pursuing is hopefully going to pay off for you as well.
Thanks. And the smile that you see overall is just because every kind of segment that you mentioned, every actually has a need for great connectivity. Right. These are all not simple systems, but very complex systems that move data around, have paths to memory, etc., which is exactly the area that we're playing in, right? So, if anything, the more diverse these use cases, the more customized or optimized the system needs, the more it plays into the strengths that Baya, from a software-driven design perspective, and kind of specialized fabric that connects all of this thing together, kind of play in. So, again, time flies when you're having fun. So, Sander, thank you very much for joining us and sharing your insights. I'm sure we'll be talking more and engaging on podcasts on marketing activity and just about around the industry. Thanks again.
Thank you. Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you for listening to Tech Threads, Weaving the Intelligent Future podcast. Join us monthly for insights into the evolving tech landscape and the future of chiplet technology. If you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to subscribe and share it with your network, and stay tuned for more expert discussions. Let's weave the intelligent future together.